Today we are on May 17th in the nucleus of Figueira in São Carlos. And the topic of today is the deepening of the topic of the last sharing, which is Irdin in the language of symbols. It's very important for each one of us to make a reflection of what each one of us is seeking at this moment. If we are awakening, if we are seeking something deeper, if we are satisfied with our current human condition. Because in this honest attitude towards all these contents, we'll be helped not by something intellectual, but by the foundation of all this work which we are developing, which is inspiration. So humanity has perceived, or better, those who have awakened in humanity have noticed that the mind is mental. It leads us up to a certain point, and then we have a kind of thirst. And in a process of transition, such as the one humanity is going through, it's very special because in previous cycles our thirst was mitigated by practices, external situations, but humanity now is at a very important moment of synthesis, at which it'll take a step to know a new dimension more consciously, which is the fourth dimension. So Irdin language is important, as we saw in the last sharing last Saturday, because it gradually creates in us a condition for superhuman states of consciousness that are not as familiar for the kind of life that humanity lives today. So it takes us to a more pleasant environment. And so we discover that within us there is a world, not a world with objects, maybe even objects, but a world with states of consciousness. And what calms us a lot and opens us to a new horizon is this reality. So this kind of content, it collaborates, which is one of the purposes of Irdin Publishing House, Editora. So they are not contents that are preparatory, that is, that insist on the correction or adjustment only of the personality of the bodies. It's a kind of work that Trigueirinho started in 1987 that seeks to place us before a new reality, not an imaginative reality or a reality of suppositions, but one of revelations that may collaborate for each one of us to confirm within themselves these other states of consciousness. But the contents, only make sense to the extent that our quest to escape this mental labyrinth also makes sense. If we are still oscillating between processes of synthesis of mental contents, because we are beings that incarnate, reincarnate, therefore we are synthesizing many contents, but at the same time we are overlapping over this new horizons for which we will not find reference in the past. Therefore, it is very important, and this is why we have chosen very specific contents and topics for us to observe, that we may observe our mechanism before these processes. Something important on the evolutionary path of the universe is for us not to compare ourselves with others, is for us to try to identify our personal need and establish our own path with a deliberate intention. And we perceive this threshold of concrete thought, and as we reach a point of loving the unknown, and here someone asked a very interesting question that may help us. The question is, to be conscious and to be present, is this the same? This kind of study, reflection, deepening does not mean a process of description or a conceptual process. It's just an opening of a horizon or window, and then each one may deepen into it if it serves them. So this is the intention of this comment. When we remember continuously that we have many levels of consciousness and that our identity is not just our human person, but especially our higher levels, then on each level we will be, or we will somehow be conscious in a certain way. Therefore, at this very moment, our non-human levels or superhuman levels, such as our soul, our spirit, higher levels, in short. They are conscious on their own planes. So here, if we become aware of our higher levels, automatically, as we become aware, these levels undergo a limitation that is significant of their states of consciousness that they represent, which are non-material states, and they try to project themselves onto what we call the human consciousness, the mind, the impressions, the phenomena. So to be present from this point of view is not the same as being conscious. A philosopher who is a member of the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy, called Paul Brunton, would say, when we become aware, we are no longer conscious, because we limit our higher consciousness to what our human mind can grasp as consciousness. Did you follow? Whereas, as we are present, we are available, even without any intention of perceiving anything, of contacting anything, in this purity of intention of being present. This in the East, in the Old East, the ancient East, is known as the process of self-emptying, being present, and breathing helps a lot in this, because breathing can only happen or take place in the present moment. I can make a number of exercises, but being present is very much helped by breathing exercises. Another question, the person says, can a mantra help dissolve involution? So let's remember that a word that for some tempers may frighten a few, but without trying to challenge these negative energies, an involutionary force or state is that state or particle consciousness or world that is still in its moment of separation from a higher source. It needs to experiment with separation, duality, matter, disunion, we might say, because it's going through the involutionary arc of creation. And humanity, our current humanity, is precisely at the arc of transition, closing a cycle of the experience of individuality and starting to go through what was called in the past the path of return, which is our consciousness remembering that we are a part. We have some echo here. We are a part of something broader. So in this remembrance of something broader, we start treading the path of return. So we should not have any intention as we practice any mantra of dissolving involution, because we do not know within this one consciousness what is the plan for that involutionary force. We cannot boast or we cannot suppose that we can do this. So the mantra can reorganize this force within a conjunct. So a mantra, as we have seen, is a formula, so to say, non-material formula as a state of consciousness. When the mantra attracts this higher consciousness, automatically the ethers, the elements, gradually receive that emanation, that vibration, and eventually some involutionary forces, if they are at their moment of reorganizing their vibration, they may be dissolved. Because in the universe there is no dissolution, there is a transmutation. So a transmutation of an involutionary state into an evolutionary state, or recycling perhaps, but never with the intention of confrontation, because this is very risky. Not risky from the dramatic emotional point of view, but because we are too much submerged into a very dense evolutionary energy on the planet as a whole. And if we expect to collide against some energies, we might miss the opportunity of working more indirectly with some energies. So we were supposed to introduce the topic of symbolic life today. Next week's sharing in São Paulo will be called Dreams as a Path of Learning. It'll be recorded on the 23rd. We'll record it in São Paulo. Those who are in São Paulo on the 23rd are invited. It'll be transmitted on the 24th. So dreams are one of the paths among many, so that our so-called inner world may help our personality, our mind, our emotions to experience other kinds of language, a symbolic language, which may be events during dreams, colors, forms, aromas. Have you experienced when you suddenly are in a garden or a park, whatever, that perfume brings to our consciousness experiences of decades ago, simply an aroma. So possibly our inner world, our soul may bring through dreams many opportunities of learning experiences, or even balancing of situations of daily life, which, when our brain is active, that with the tendency to control that it has, we do not have the opportunity to perceive aspects that are less evident and more subtle.
Então, semana que vem teremos atenção só esse assunto dos sonhos, daremos alguns exemplos. Pessoas enviam muitos sonhos com números.
So next week we'll talk about numbers, mingling in different situations. These are topics of many people who send questions. Dreams is one of the most important topics Trigueirinho put attention to since 1987, because we spent at least a third of our life sleeping. So for sure, if we could place a little more attention to this, even this moment, even we do not become aware or conscious of the dreams, but if we consider those moments as moments of life and learning, or even a moment of service, many beings, perhaps many of us even, they sometimes wake up even more tired than when they went to bed. So if we can understand that our subtle bodies, our emotional and mental bodies continue to work during the night, during the sleep and dream, we may create a more balanced condition so that when we wake up, we do not have to interpret this, because there may be other meanings, such as a health condition, but it might also be because we were serving. So when we come from an external activity, we take a shower, we rest quietly. So when we have a certain attitude, everything, when we wake up, everything may become organized and start being a little more conscious experience on our evolutionary path. So returning to the topic of mantras, this process of the symbolic language, we will today also highlight some cares of this topic of the practice with mantras. We live in a civilization that is very materialistic. Therefore, it's very selfish. It has a sense of possessiveness that's quite inherent in it. But there are three attitudes and cares that we should have when we approach the practice of mantra, especially in Irdin language, so that we may not project upon this opportunity that the universe is bringing in this cycle, the one of repeating a pattern that you will understand. So the first attitude or intention or movement that is relatively normal and the vast majority of human beings is the energy of ambition. So if we have any kind of ambition, personal ambition or spiritual ambition, or ambition of standing out, or the ambition of playing the victim role, playing the victim role, it may be a kind of hidden ambition. Because this ambition, what it does in the practice of mantra, is to attract corresponding energies that lack government, self-government. They do not have a higher energy conducting it, so they are loose energies. When this vibration of ambition or greed, better word, they become organized with a very intense greed, it attracts these corresponding energies that are uncontrolled. So the result of this is that we'll see ourselves with a consciousness without control, a consciousness that loses discernment and also becomes ungoverned. Because again, it is an energy that practically repels higher conduction. Then, second, when we have some yearning for power over ourselves, over our process, over our feelings, thoughts, we must and should aspire to polish and contain this movement in us, but not try to have power over it. Because we have studied that humanity, or I correct myself, since the Passion of Christ, which was a cosmic and spiritual event, Jesus lived there, an opening of several portals or expansions of consciousness or initiations. We have studied them also, which are situations in which a higher level consciousness of ours. What is an expansion of consciousness? We make contact with other laws or higher states, and from this space, this level of more expanded consciousness, this higher level starts gradually to have certain control over the lower levels. So Jesus prepared humanity for many expansions of consciousness. In this end of cycle, we are being prepared and stimulated internally for processes of initiation from this point of view. So until we are initiated, and none of us is, we have the possibility to contain, reorganize, polish, but not control the inner energies. Our inner world still does not have this power. What may happen if we are inserted in evolutionary tasks or service to the world, to the planet, what we call grace of state or higher energies may communicate with our consciousness and help the organization of these forces, but not control these forces. And the yearning for power ends up attracting blind forces that depend on control to be contained. And as we do not have this power of controlling them, we end up in a kind of whirlwind of involutionary forces as we emanate this energy of yearning for power. And the last one is what we call gray magic, not to mention black magic, is when we direct our objectives to personal goals, even objectives that we may consider as spiritual objectives. Because when we direct these objectives with a certain gray intention, we attract energies from the astral and mental plane that are wandering about in the intermediate planes that can use our intention, polarize themselves in them. How do they polarize themselves in them? Through the yearning that these energies have to have an experience in matter. So when they find our energy, they polarize themselves in this, they start experiencing what they cannot experience otherwise through us. So in this time that we live, we need to have great attention, a purity of intention that is very solid and honest, and not just trust. Trust can be something mental. So, but we know, which is different from trusting, we are being accompanied by the energies of light, which bring what we need when the moment comes. It's a different level of higher maturity. When we work with mantras, with the Irdin language, we are directly working with what the Esoteric Glossary calls structural patterns. So we have been mentioning the glossary a lot because there we have hundreds of entries that gradually place our consciousness in contact with another kind of understanding, another kind of mental descriptions and conceptual descriptions, because they open our consciousness to other aspects. So we work with a mantra. Remember, we worked with Okuka Banaiti Shibana Kikinawa in the last sharing, and we saw that the word Okuka in Irdin, it's not a translation, but it opens, it creates a condition for a luminescent impulse to enter our consciousness, to start creating a work, because a higher energy will always be an intelligent energy, not an intellectual energy, but intelligent in the sense of transporting a non-material impulse from a higher state of consciousness without becoming contaminated by anything on the path. So there is a work by Trigueirinho called Foundations of the Fiery World, and I would recommend at this time of the public lectures that whoever wants may approach this book, because in the 90s, Trigueirinho had an experience on behalf of humanity to practice affirmations, spontaneous, evolutionary, luminous affirmations, all offerings. They were not requests, they were offerings with very simple geometric forms. Circle, a circle with a point, a cross, angles, Los Angeles. All this to help us. In that book, there is a lot of information that helps us come out of this mental labyrinth in which we are today. So we concentrate on the symbols and enrich this visualization with a mantric process, with this attitude of being present, not of being conscious, although the presence will make us conscious. But being conscious, perhaps, does not protect us from becoming absent. Do you follow me? It's because we are seeking consciousness. My mind may go somewhere, accompany my mind where it goes with a thought. I start being present somewhere else, no longer present at this very moment, this current moment. Even if I'm conscious somewhere else, it's different to be present without expectations than being conscious. So this work with Foundations of the Fiery World is a very important work, because it's not Irdin that Trigueirinho was practicing in that book. There were affirmations in a language that all of us can understand, but we can use the same process of the geometric forms and place Irdin there. In this entry, mantras in Irdin of the Esoteric Glossary, you have many examples of mantra. If we pick a mantra, not even the whole mantra, a geometric form, and we have that present, the care with the practices of up to today is that we have been encouraged until 1988. It was the moment of humanity to seek results, and bring to our consciousness and human consciousness a result, so that we might witness that that had results, yield results. And this transition to be present and make offerings is even a way to bring greater results without expecting them. The only result we can find today is to find our own inner world, which is the door that will place us in contact with everything that exists of spiritual, of superphysical. So this book can be very important. Well, before we see here some considerations about Irdin, it's very important in the cyclical moment in which we are, as we saw it started in 1988, for us to open ourselves to understand how the universe is working with us today. Because as I studied on last sharing, we have many things pending from unfinished stages. As we went through the East studies, groups of white magic, of occult knowledge, occultist groups, religious groups, in each one of these lifetimes we had something to complete. So today it's very important for us to seek to understand the structure of the spiritual hierarchy today on the planet. Because each one of us has gone through all this work in previous cycles, and now we need to understand that there is a central hierarchy, who is called Samana, is one of the aspects expressed by Christ Jesus. And all the other hierarchies that we know, Buddha and many representatives of the hierarchy, some of them even contemporary, such as Paul Brunton, Krishnamurti, Padre Pio, Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John of the Cross, so many mystics, including Saint Ignatius of Loyola. They are all of them members of the same spiritual hierarchy, which is the hierarchy of light that is accompanying the planet at this moment. And each one of us, throughout many incarnations and also in the universe, we had contact with this hierarchy at some moment. And the hierarchy is not just individual beings. They are mature representations of states of consciousness, of the energies of ray, of the 7 material rays. So hierarchy is not a being, but it's the expression of many values and energies. And this is very important because we are coexisting this end of cycle with hierarchies that are with us in our inner world. Each one of us is accompanied, for example, since the beginning of our incarnation by a guardian angel. So each one of us, each human soul, has a guardian angel that therefore knows all our evolutionary process. And if we know anything about ourselves, we know only this incarnation. So wouldn't it be fundamental to reformat our understanding of the guardian angel? We think of children's tales at night being told about the guardian angel. They are much more than this. And through this reconciliation with our guardian angel, we will discover a process of accompaniment that is fundamental for this cycle and for the prevention of situations, for avoiding the repetition of experiences and many things. We saw in the last sharing the topic of mantra Okuka Banaiti, this opening for the purification and harmonization. We saw that when we practice this mantra, not as with an intention of directing this practice to a personal sector of our life, but to light in itself. So Okuk attracts this possibility of transformation of human bodies. And we also saw that eventually, when this mantra starts to work on our consciousness, it starts developing a process that we call retram, which is a word in Irdin, which describes that when the moment comes for us to live a certain harmonization, this mantra being worked with love, with a directed intention, with love for life, for evolution, for our purification, this gradually opens these channels of inner healing, and through harmony we can live many processes. And today, in this final part of this sharing, we'll see a mantra that is also in the booklet of mantras, which is the mantra Saiti Imu. The mantra has a title or a description, which is confirmation of inner greetings and greetings. The word vow, in the sense of the awakening of consciousness, is a position that we establish towards life to have a commitment. So when I take a vow, I am making a commitment, X, to dedicate to what that vow represents and unite to the values that correspond to it. And this mantra of confirmation of vows, inner vows and greetings, it's like a flight of our consciousness, and it even has the symbol of the flight of the bird. When we, in the intention of reaffirming our commitment with evolution, we may mantralize, use this mantra. This gradually creates in us a certain condition. So the mantra says in Irdin, Saiti Mu, Sarvaiku, Saiti Sarvaimu. Saiti Mu, Sarvaiku, Saiti Sarvaimu, Saiti. So when we work with this mantra again, we may even have this image of the flight of the bird, and this bird is that which in our consciousness corresponds to the Holy Spirit. So all inner states, when they touch the human consciousness and find some opening that fosters some elevation of the consciousness, they may be associated with the Holy Spirit. So the flight of the bird, this takes place or may take place when we are decided for transformation. So let's try to understand in a definitive way that the work of mantras in Irdin is not a magical work. It's not a formula, although in the universe, the pure energy, when I pronounce Saitimu, in the universe it reverberates and attracts a neutral vibration that corresponds to the vibration that I am emanating. To promote this, to foster this liberation of the consciousness, this flight of the bird, we have to be decided for transformation and open and aware that we need help to come out of this mental labyrinth in which we find ourselves. Where something in us, almost always, we insist on the same path, the same process, the same route that we know that is labyrinthic, if the word exists. We keep taking the same step. We know it's not the way out, but it seems that something in us cannot break this vicious circle. So the mantras in Irdin is a kind of way out of this labyrinth, an offering from the universe for us to come out of this. So Saitimu, and the mind, not the mind lucubrating, but the human being, we humans, we have a vocal cord, and it's a fruit of the evolutionary process of creative energies. It's a cyclical, it's a concourse of the Devic elemental kingdoms that is immense. In the times of Lemuria, people would only whisper. They didn't have the creative mobility that we have today. We know that we can mentralize, emit a sound, and this attracts a corresponding energy from the evolutionary process. So it may contact with states that were not possible at that moment in Lemuria. When we open ourselves to the liberation of some state of consciousness in us, attachment or some kind of suffering or some restlessness or incomprehension, this needs to be, let's use a word, transmuted, which is the change of the vibration from one state of consciousness into another one. It becomes transmuted from one state into another. So starting in 1988, it was said that the energies of the central sun started entering the planet directly in different ways, bringing rays of the central sun, which were rays of transmutation. So today, all of us live this moment of purification, of rescue of our best level, and inevitably, the entrance of these energies from the central sun, it fosters, even unconsciously, a state of transmutation. The point is, as it comes to make a change in the human consciousness, it finds this filter of free will, and we not always open ourselves to transmutation. So there comes a shock, because the central sun energies enter into humanity, not one or another. This energy comes to purify humanity, purify our inner world, and to make a pressure so that our consciousness may gradually elevate and become liberated from these bonds with less evolved energies. So if we adhere to transformation, if we do not want to lead the process, as we saw in the previous sharing, this is relatively harmonious. But harmonious is not placid, contemplative. Harmonious means balanced in that positive pressure that each one may stand. This is not conducted by us, led by us. This is why there is an axiom that says the boat, the sail, the rope, even this is a part of the boat, but wind blows where it wants. So all our effort, offering, our dedication, the work of ourselves, the practices, they are parts of the boat. But let's not be mistaken. It's when the wind blows that the boat moves on to its next port. So this mantra, this confirmation of vows, and a way to say thank you. But gratitude for what? What have I received to say thank you? We are so selfish that we think we haven't received anything. But evolution will generate in us this gratitude of rescuing in our consciousness the feeling of belongingness in the evolutionary plan. So we live in a different state of consciousness in which we are loved, are included, we feel we are a part of this. It's a liberation from that labyrinth. So this is a mantra of gratitude, therefore it's very important. A care, as I was saying, that accompanies this mantra for transformation is the one. We as human beings, we want to interpret what is good for us and the part that is less comfortable, which is transformation. What is our seeing ourselves adapting to states of consciousness that are unknown. This demands an effort for our bodies. This generates an accommodation in vibration that we have to learn to deal with. If we start working with Saitimu and we are attached and we do not want to transform ourselves, we are invoking rain and we do not want to become wet. And rain has nothing to do with our resistance. If we invoke the rain, it will rain. So I start creating a conflict for myself. The blame is to put on us. My resistance to accept the reorganization of our particles that is brought by the mantras. The one who has the energy of discipline and starts working in a repetitive way, parenthesis in the East, as we all know, the practice of mantra is carried out implicitly with repetition, rhythm, self-emptying, rhythm, repetition, self-emptying. So it's like a metabolism. You put a drop, it makes another reaction. 2 drops, another reaction, until you put a third or fourth drop and the reaction changes. So the mantra is the same for each one. There is no specific number. If you keep repeating, you will end up in a new state. This will activate in us a process of continuous transformation. But if I don't understand the process and I ingenuously want to get rid of a headache or bad digestion, poor digestion, this energy that I'm invoking will press my consciousness and I will live a discomfort that I have created myself, for myself. This is why the purity of intention and understanding of what Irdin language is are so necessary. And this mantra specifically will gradually enter Saiti Imu Sarvaiku. The mantra, which is intelligent, will understand that I'm open to transformation, giving thanks for this moment, and that I want to become liberated from something. So it starts fostering an impulse so that I may be displaced from the point, but I try to resist. I create a resistance, and this may even be suffering for us, may be a source of suffering for us. So there are 3 factors that are important with this mantra specifically, which is the following. First is our understanding that depending on our inner situation, and our inner situation is not just my emotional state and mental state, it's mainly our inner being, a deeper layer of our consciousness with which we are not used to live with. We invoke it in prayer, in meditation, in silence, in practices, but we are not used to live with it. So our inner situation and the work with this mantra will live energy, therefore vibratory, cellular and spiritual transformation. So we have to be aware that the work with this mantra on many levels of consciousness will change our current situation. I'll have an experience. Go ahead, do it. But be aware that your experience will bring a consequence. It will either be one more element and one more tool in your inner world, or it will bring you a positive pressure so that you may be attentive not to create a resistance. And then, and this is very important, if we are really allowing and accepting the evolutionary steps to take place in us. So humanity is quite peculiar in this. We change even the genes of animals and plants. Aren't we strange? We are strange for the creation, not among us. Who knows if the plant somehow, the genetic, how can we dare to change the genes? This will be a study of its own someday. when we when we accept and allow the transformation to take place, this gradually flows and changes our process, including the atomic and molecular process, and the consciousness that we call the guardian angel. It doesn't work alone. We have studied that when we incarnate, let's see ourselves as a chain. In each incarnation, we add to this chain one more echelon. We reincarnate, and then the chain becomes longer. So the point between one incarnation and the next one, which will be organized, our inner world or our soul up or inwards. It glimpses on the best opportunities for evolution and will organize our next incarnation. So if we use, or if we want to make use of this tool, which are the mantras, to create a condition so that the energy of transformation and liberation may take place in us, or if we want to confirm our commitment with evolution, because this is a mantra of confirmation of vows, some levels of consciousness of the spiritual hierarchy which accompany humanity, together with our guardian angel, will measure, not measure in the human way, but they will measure in accordance with that plan for our incarnation, how our rhythm of transformation is, and compare as a reference and a thermometer of how things are happening. This mantra is very important in this sense, because if we confirm our vows, if we allow transformation to take place, if we accept transformation, in the East, one of the most essential vows, both in India, China, Japan, is detachment. We would see everything as transitory, as Maya, as people would say, so that the consciousness could go through that process of transformation without being stuck in some specific experience. So, when we hold this process of transformation, the hierarchy, which we call the Lords of Karma, which is a level of the hierarchy, we may study only the Lords of Karma, which is a very important topic among these contexts. The Lords of Karma, together with our soul, together with our guardian angel, they seek within the same situation or incarnation, a situation that may foster a resolution that is as efficient as possible. So we must not see the spiritual hierarchy as we see ourselves humanly, because the tendency, our tendency is to judge the spiritual hierarchy with the human thought as punishment, revenge. But for the spiritual hierarchy, I'm referring to the hierarchy of light, they don't have these concepts. In the evolutionary universe, this doesn't exist. So when we resist a true transformation that is inner, this mantra fosters this transformation, and the hierarchy finds a resistance in us. This recalculates that impulse in us so that it's not wasted, and it waits for the moment, a new moment of openness to bring a new impulse. So let's see the degree of mercy and love that accompanies us in these times. But we have to say yes, and this mantra, Saiti Musarwaiku, is a mantra of confirmation of vows, a yes, a greeting, and a joy for transformation. But we have to be prudent and conscious, aware of before this. Now, the third point, which is the most sensitive among all of these, which places us in the threshold of another pressure that this mantra creates on us, as we human beings have been up to today. We spend our lives on the planet, but we do not awaken to our evolutionary commitment. So when we study our relationship with the other kingdoms of the planet, we'll see how far we are from all this, with a life that is practically selfish as human beings, and as regarding the evolution of the kingdoms. Because when we say Saiti Mu, this is not a formula. It's not that I say the mantra and all this happens. The mantra in Irdin may bring this experience depending on a whole set of situations that are evolutionary in essence. It's not a mechanical process in which I record the mantra and I put it in a loop and I'll be transformed. It doesn't work that way. The mantra creates a condition and puts us in contact with a different state of consciousness. It brings some codes. And the third point is very sensitive because it starts working on our magnetic field, because our transformation, what is a transformation? Is a displacement in consciousness, in attitude, in action to my next step. This is a transformation. Like the kingdoms in which they are natural and organic, but in us it has ceased to be organic. So this mantra reorganizes our magnetic field, and we start making contact with the energy of transmutation of our own states into other states, which become conscious for us through our evolutionary commitment. So we gradually awaken and we start feeling that we are responsible for what happens, not only for us, but for the planet. So let's make the question, can we feel this responsibility? Do I want to feel this responsibility, or do I still want to indulge in pleasure? Or what is my commitment with evolution, with the planet, with humanity? Why do I want to live a transformation? To be healed of something mental, physical, and emotional, only for that? Or really to fly like this bird flying? This mantra in this is this, something in us to fly, and we may identify or remember our evolutionary commitment, which is a very inner process that will present to us gradually, and we may start dialoguing with it. And if we assimilate these inner commitments, this energy from the central sun comes not only to purify us, but it starts generating protection. Am I clear? So in the first stage, it transmutes, it places us in a different state, and as this state consolidates, this energy encapsulates our consciousness in a field of protection. Protection from what? So that we may not become mixed with the involutionary states, and we may continue to serve with less interference. But the criteria is our purity of intention and our offering for evolution. This is why the work with the consciousness is mentioned. This mantra, it creates a condition so that we may feel detached from these less positive forces. The point is, we do not precisely perceive and understand that many bonds, emotional and mental bonds, are with these evolutionary forces. And as the civilization is hand in hand with this, we see the result of life in the world today, and we have great difficulty selecting, so to say, what we think and feel, so that we may really become detached from these ties. So a lot of prudence is necessary when we work with this mantra, so that we do not foster a process of detachment that is forced. The forces will come after us because they do not understand how this process has taken place. So everything should be done with purity of intention, with a sincere offering. When we are present in an offering, that will work on us. Let's leave it free, because the energy is intelligent. This greeting and gratitude that the mantra also represents is important because it represents a gesture of humility on our part. Saiti mu sarvaiku. So in the universe, it's as if our human and conscious energy were consciously responding and thanking for the opportunity of inner growth. And to reach this point, we have to be quite humble. The normal human being, with their pride, they tend to think they are in the control of the situation. We have the control over this. The spiritual path of liberation is the opposite. It's a surrender to the unknown, not to the uncertain, but to the unknown, what we still do not know, but we have lived within us. So this mantra in this aspect is very important because it's a response of gratitude for the opportunity of inner growth and spiritual growth. And to conclude, before we enter the questions, is that this mantra, with this meekness that it gradually brings for the offering, for the gratitude, for the recognition of the need for transformation, it disconnects better. It may disconnect from our consciousness. The verbs are actions. If I use the verb in the wrong verb tense, I may say something wrong. It may collaborate and help the disconnection of energies of wrath, of anger, and guilt. Because the energy of anger, the state of meekness, the state of stopping fighting ourselves, this gradually disconnects the energy of anger, which has many children. The capital energy has many children. It's not the topic of today. The energy of guilt is gradually deactivated to the extent that we decide to adhere to our evolutionary commitment, and the sense of responsibility is gradually rescued. And what will we feel guilt about? If I have awakened to the fact that I can assume an evolutionary responsibility, what I have done in an unconscious way will, at the right moment, be healed. So you see how in just one mantra, again, it's not a magical formula. Oh, I'm feeling anger. I'm going to repeat. You may even end up with even more anger. Careful. It's the process in the consciousness that will create a condition so that our consciousness may become meek, peaceful. We gradually transform, and this energy will no longer find an element to generate all this state of anger, and guilt again will be healed by the evolutionary commitment, or in other words, by the confirmation of vows and the acceptance of assuming evolutionary responsibilities. Do we have any questions, brother? There are some questions here. First, Friar, is interpretation of dreams intuitive, or is it better to reflect with the mind about the symbol that has been contacted? What would be precise? Ask next week in the dreams. The sister, please ask again next week. A question was made in the transmission in English. Good evening, dear Friar. Could you explain the name of Padre Pio and of other hierarchies that you have mentioned? See, it's not precisely an explanation. We said in the Esoteric Glossary, for example, that at the beginning of each letter in the alphabet, there is a symbology of each letter. So, Padre Pio, a part of his cosmic name is Muriel. So this name, each letter that composes this name would have a study of its own and numerology that is too long for today. It'll be written for someday. what implications energy-wise to practice mantras in a daily context with people who are out of the work? I will only clarify what people may be saying about the work. We who work in the work of the Federation, what we call the contents and activities that we are used to and are expressed in these 25 affiliates. The point, as always, is what is the intention that is behind this practice. We have to be careful when we carry out a work with color, symbols, mantras, is that many of us have had experiences in the past, especially in Atlantis. We have a very great emotional tendency to place many intentions and emotions and feelings together. It's not a problem or an issue. It's just a gesture of prudence on our part not to mix contents. So if we are practicing Irdin, let's practice it first individually, consolidate this experience, and then ask for much light and to ask for much inspiration of how, if, and with whom to practice. Because let's suppose that among some people or in a group, there may be some unfinished experience of someone in some magical or mystical group that may use this tool or this mantra with a different intention. So you mix mantra with rituals of different practices, and we start deteriorating a tool that the universe is offering to us to heal us from all the practices that should be healed, that have been so much misused in the evolution. So we have to have a lot of discernment. Here we have two questions that are very similar, so I'll read both. Coin asks, these radiations of the central sun, do they bring symptoms in the body, in the physical, such as pains or anxiety? And Rosa Rios asks, lately the sun has had many strong emanations. Do they have influence on our bodies? When we talk about the central sun, it's not the sun that we see in the physical sun. It's something much more immaterial, non-material, that is bringing a whole set of impulses that we have to have a lot of prudence, caution when we relate to this. The point of the result of this, so to say, of the contact with the central sun is not only through this physical sun. The point is, the energy has come to purify us, and purify us is not the same as cause suffering or punishment. It's not punishment. It's a purification that is necessary for my current moment, evolutionary moment. We may even be in a suffering process. This may be lived by our consciousness with a certain harmony, even if physically, emotionally, and mentally this may bring some pain or what we call discomfort. This is why the work is always in the consciousness, because if in my consciousness interacts with all this and much more, way beyond understanding, it loves, and in this mantra it gives thanks for all the help from the universe, the person should have a certainty that everything that comes from the universe is edifying, even if it brings a stage of purification and suffering. This will resize my reaction to what may be happening, but definitely an energy of transmutation that comes from the central sun may find a whole cluster of resistances on our physical consciousness and also mental and emotional consciousness. It may have to push it a little bit to displace it from its spot. or maybe use that resistance to generate a condition of learning in the consciousness. Because there is a law that has been distorted, which is the law of universal economy. So nothing is wasted in the universe. So when an impulse comes from the central sun, if it finds a context, it is reorganized always to foster a learning and a liberation. It's not a condemnation or suffering. There is a learning in that. So this question, what do I have to learn with this? If we are living something, let's ask ourselves, what do I have to learn from this? A point to find an answer is in the process of our reincarnation, our echelon from a previous incarnation. We disincarnate, we go to the astral plane, the mental plane, the intermediate plane, until we come to the next incarnation. But the so-called permanent atom of each body, etheric, physical, emotional, and mental, it's the same. It's like a matrix that rebuilds the bodies on that level. Am I clear? The physical permanent atom, when we reincarnate, it receives heredity, this Lords of Karma, the guardian angels, our soul, and this set of situations that rebuilds the physical body, already foreseeing what we call diseases or limitations, which are those situations that will encourage and stimulate a learning experience. It's not a condemnation or punishment. It's the best possible condition for us to have a learning experience. So to synthesize the answer, the energy of the central sun and also the physical sun that polarizes and intensifies it from the physical and etheric level, it brings a kind of stimulus we should have a lot of caution about. Because if we remember, as we are spiritual beings, the sun is also a spiritual being, is the physical expression of a solar logos. Those codes that this logos emanates are contacted in the consciousness. You don't need to be standing under the sun, because if you are fragile in some plane of existence, it may not do good to you. It doesn't mean not to connect with the sun. It's just a matter of understanding. Friar, regarding the symbols of the book, Foundations of the Fiery World, if associated to the mantras you mentioned, does it potentialize its effects? In truth, it's 8, so it's time to conclude. So let's go to the last question. This will be the last question. It's not an effect. If we can call it an effect, we create a condition, a vibratory condition. The mantra has a rhythm. It brings a code. It brings states of consciousness. It creates a condition. And we connect to the movement of mantralization, which moves the ethers on the inner planes. We connect a visualization, or even seeing a printed symbol. We add values, geometric formulae, which are the subtle structures. Of course, this can potentialize and create, so to say, a complex of impulses that will generate on its turn a kind of energy that will have to metabolize. So careful not to generate a kind of metabolism and impulses that might overstimulate you. So if we are not greedy and we do not yearn for power, and if we do not want to control the energy, we can work with the circle, the point, and the mantra, and have an experience. So leave a piece of paper by your side. If you feel anything, if you have an impression, write down. To put on the internet, no. I'm not making any advertisement of any publishing newspaper. So a month ago I had forgotten, so you read again. Ukuka Banaiti with the circle and a point, and I saw a red bird. And you write down, what is this red bird? Our inner world, our intuitive world, is waiting for us to want to dialogue with all this. It's our process. Some people write down their dreams, they put the date. What does it mean? I have dreamed with this, but our intuitive world will gradually help us understand. It's an inner path. It's not a mental process, nor is it even an external result or a physical result. Okay? Very good. Have nice dreams this week. Sleep well. Prepare yourselves. Do not use too much the screen. Make a good offering and love this process because we incarnated. Why does our incarnation have to be suffering? Night should be an opportunity to be different. Have nice dreams. Next week in São Paulo, we study dreams as a path of learning. We'll give some examples, and we'll see how some dreams with numbers, colors. Sometimes we feel lost in unknown places or known places. We meet people who have disincarnated. Many people have this kind of dream. They send us. And then we dream almost every night. But our etheric brain, as we do not pay attention to our inner life, it's too subtle. It doesn't make surface of contact with our glands and doesn't prepare our neurological process to register all this. Regardless of being or not able to register, to record this, have you woken up and feeling, I feel different, I don't remember the dream, but I wake up different. This is the inner work with the consciousness.
Nós chamamos aqui de acordar, não? O cérebro físico desperta e ali alguma coisa aconteceu.
We wake up and something has happened. So, sweet dreams. See you in São Paulo next week. Thank you very much. Good night. Perdi a voz completamente. Eu não sei o que eu faço. Eu tenho que beber água durante a partilha, independente se eu estou com sede.